So thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the March Wyndham Park Neighborhood Meeting. We're doing our first inaugural Zoom and in-person hybrid meeting event, so pretty exciting. We still will have our meetings every other month, and we're going to try and keep this format going so that we can make it as accessible to everybody as possible. And we will also be able to have some closed captioning. Do we have closed caption? Yeah, so at the very bottom of your screen on Zoom, if you are in a difficult hearing environment, go ahead and click the show captions button and it'll do live closed captioning for us. And there is some translation service. I don't think we have that set up yet, but that'll be in a future meeting. So I think we're ready. We're ready. Welcome again. So here we are. Let's go to the next slide, please. What I wanted to do was start, we're not going to do any introductions. We've got some of our board members here. Some of them are remote. There's a lot of people, and we're going to try and keep to a tight schedule. Last meeting, we promised everybody that we'd be done by 8:30. That's when the meetings end. If we end early, that's great, but we're not going to go long. So everybody, all of our special guests have 15 minutes. I have 15 minutes at the front end to talk about Wyndham Park stuff. And so this is what we're going to get started with. So it always helps to just refresh everybody on what we actually do as an organization, why we're here and why you all are here. But as you can see, we try and connect our Wyndham Parkers, I just came up with that a little bit ago, with their government, whether it's our council member, whether it's MnDOT, other transportation departments, state of Minnesota with Senator Dietzick, who couldn't be here tonight, but being able to allow residents and stakeholders to connect to their government so that we can make sure that we're communicating and investing resources in the best way possible. We have 4 goals as an organization: is to eliminate disparities, connect our people, make sure that they're safe, ensure complete neighborhoods, and have a healthy environment. So those are the goals that we're working on as an organization. And when we think about investing our resources, that's what we are using as our guiding principles to help get those resources properly invested. Our meeting agenda tonight, we're going to talk about a little bit of Wyndham Park stuff. If you've been to these before, this is not new, but it's nice to refresh it for anybody that is new. Then we have our crime prevention specialist from the 2nd Precinct of Abdir Rashid Ali. He's going to be giving us just an update on the safety situation, the police situation, and just an update from the city's perspective on crime and crime prevention and trends that are happening in our community. Then we have Councilor Payne is here to join us, or here with us to talk about just Ward 1 update. And we have a standing invitation for the counselor to check in, so we appreciate you joining us. Then we also have the Johnson Street and I-35. There's an intersection over by the quarry that's going through an update. They're going to be working on that this summer, so there's an update to that for us. We're going to talk about some other stuff that Wyndham Park has going on, and then we'll do an open forum at the end. So Thomas, I know you're busy back there. Could I have you flip the slide for him when you get a chance? Yep. He's got a whole tech station back there for anybody that can't see it. So he's got a lot going on. So these are our neighborhood programs. There are a couple others, but these are the big ones that Wyndham Park has to offer. Wyndham Park Citizens in Action has to offer to its residents and stakeholders. There's a home security rebate program. Free energy squad audits. So anybody that's in Wyndham Park, you get a free energy squad audit, but the list is quite long. So if you want to take advantage of that, sign up now and you won't get it for a little while, but get on the list sooner than later. And then there's 2 low interest loan programs that are available for property owners and homeowners in Wyndham Park. Now very competitive interest rates, and both a home and a commercial loan program for that. So if you've got a home remodel project coming up, you want to redo the kitchen, work on the bathroom, something like that, these are great loan programs, and those are administered through CEE, and it's just a really nice program. So check those out, or send us an email if you have any questions. Yeah, let's do Councilor Payne first. There you go.
Thank you. Okay. This is so high tech. Hello, everyone. Elliot Payne, he, him. I represent Ward 1 on City Council. I didn't prepare any formal comments today, so I'll just kind of start rambling, and then you can jump in with questions if they're relevant. I want to say, Thomas, how long ago was that we did our neighborhood summit our Ward 1 Neighborhood Summit about 2 weeks ago. And so this is an initiative that our office is trying to lead around what is the future of neighborhood associations? How do we make meaning out of the work that you all, I mean, you're here for a reason, you want to be connected. How do we enable that connection in a way that's not just about Wyndham Park, but kind of broadening that connection across all neighborhoods? And so that's been kind of the theme of some of these summits is how do we have tighter connection, collaboration, coordination between neighborhoods, and then have that be, you know, a locus of activity so that there's that deeper connection back into government by way of me as the council member. And so, you know, one of the big things has been a discussion around like neighborhood funding and base funding. And that's like a really big issue for folks ever since there was the tax increment financing district funding that is sunsetting with the NRP dollars. And so how do we think about neighborhoods moving forward given that financial reality? And so I was actually just briefed today on some of the work the city is doing around the 3rd precinct. So obviously that's a building that has a lot of tension and even, I'll just leave it at tension and conflict about what we should do moving forward. And one of the things that happened in the immediate aftermath of the 3rd precinct burning was the immediate neighborhood associations started to coordinate and collaborate with each other organically outside of us, any formal city process. They were just lying in the wake of all of this trauma and trying to be responsive to what was happening in the community. So they did a lot of deep community engagement, which was totally self-directed on their own. And now fast forward to today, the city is catching up with where the neighborhood association was. They have a formal contract in place with an organization to do that kind of more authoritative community engagement, but that contractor is subcontracting with the neighborhood associations that had already done this work because it was such a meaningful way of engaging the community. And that's kind of a good reflection of some of the ideas that I have around keeping this sustainable is you're already doing so much meaningful work in the community, and the city should recognize and reflect the value that you're creating through whether it's contracts for community engagement or other ways that the city could more formally be in relationship with the neighborhoods and in a way that can help drive some funding sources. So that's a thought that's been bopping around in my head recently, and just I had that briefing today, and it just kind of is connecting with some of the work that we're doing around this broader legislative directive, looking for more sustainable sources of funding and how to unlock the funding that you have right now, because there's a lot of different funds available for neighborhoods that have a lot of restrictions associated with it. So there'll be more to come on that. I'm trying to think of other really meaningful things that are relevant that are happening in city government. There's a lot going on all the time. So filtering it to what's most meaningful is like the biggest challenge. Are there any questions before I ramble on to another topic? Yeah.
Take this for a second. So this is a great introduction to, I'll be on camera here too, next to you, is as we have the ability to hear from folks that are in Zoom land and also here in the room. So obviously we're going with the mic. We have a second mic. We didn't use it tonight just to keep things a little bit more simple. But if you have a question, you know, just say it and then maybe you can repeat it. Yeah. But then anybody that's joining in via Zoom, either raise your hand or maybe just open up the question because we can hear you. And so it's very collaborative. So go ahead and jump in.
I met with Larry just yesterday at our open office hours. We'll actually have open office hours tomorrow night at Fair State. So that's another venue where I'm also trying to just be welcoming and invitational to, if you can't make it to a neighborhood association meeting, maybe you can make it to an office hours. And we try to do them in the morning and in the evening to give people multiple opportunities. And we usually do that twice a month. I believe we are starting at 5, but let me just double check that so that I don't, 5 to 7 at Fair State. Come join us. Yeah.
I'm curious, thinking about the shape of our roads today.
Great question. Yes. So for the folks on Zoom, does the city have an overriding plan for total reconstruction of roads. We absolutely do. I almost feel like Dan would be, or even Chris would be very good people to answer that. But the process is called our Capital Long Range Improvement Plan. And we have the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. That's why I'm pointing over to Dan and to Chris, because they were both members of that committee. And that is a process by which every year we do a budget. Well, we budget in 6-year increments to allocate yearly spending on road reconstruction. And so what we do is the city does an assessment of, what are the road conditions, how much traffic are on the roads, all these different dimensions of how we would score it. And then members of our CLIC committee, like Dan and Chris in the past, they would, evaluate, probably even from biking around the neighborhood and go, you know what? St. Anthony Parkway is extraordinarily bad, right? St. Anthony Parkway is maybe a bad example because it's actually managed. It's under the jurisdiction of the parks, but it is maintained by the city. So I maybe should have used a simpler, more straightforward one. So like 29th Avenue was originally scheduled for a total reconstruction. And then based on some scoring and COVID and other factors, it got downgraded from a reconstruction to a mill and overlay, and it was bumped back. Was it a year or was it 2 years? I don't recall, but it's essentially every single road in the city is going through this planning process and getting scored accordingly. I'm actually wanting to reach out to our public works director right now, because it's like the potholes are so bad right now that the gap between when, for instance, 29th Avenue is programmed for even that mill and overlay, that's scheduled for a couple years out from now, and the potholes are like they're car eaters right now. So but we do have continuous maintenance. 311 is the best way to stay on top of the potholes. And like a more systemic conversation I'm having as it relates to the parkway is our parkway maintenance program. Like I said, under the jurisdiction of the park board, but maintained by the city. The city allocates $750,000 a year for parkway maintenance. It's been that figure for 20 years. So $750,000 year after year for 20 years, no inflation adjustment, massive need. So I was looking at our maintenance plan, and St. Anthony Parkway is planned for this year for major maintenance, but it's not a total reconstruction, right? And it's taking up just about the entire $750,000 budget. Any other questions?
Hey,
Oh, I can hear you great.
hey, it's Tara. I have a question about the Community Commission on Police Oversight, because I've seen some criticism of it, that it's kind of like a do nothing like place for people to just, I guess, meet up. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the it says what we do. It's established to provide a forum for the public to have meaningful engagement in police oversight, and that seems pretty squishy. The list of things that it may do, it doesn't. Anyway, I just am hoping to get your thoughts and yeah, whatever you have to commentary or.
Yes, so I will give some context for folks that aren't knowledgeable about this topic. So the Community Commission on Police Oversight, CCPO, is our new civilian oversight ordinance. It was the last action we took at the end of the year last year. It is replacing 2 different civilian panels that we used to have, or civilian bodies we used to have. It was the PCOC, which was the Police Conduct Oversight Committee, and the OPCR, which was, I cannot remember the name, what it stands for, but basically OPCR was for doing investigations of individual instances of misconduct. PCOC was a civilian board that was responsible for kind of evaluating the policies and procedures at that kind of more systemic level. And one of the big things that's a challenge for civilian oversight, in the state of Minnesota is that state law puts limits on civilian oversight. They can't issue discipline. They can't make statements of fact for like a criminal or other type of investigation. They can give recommendations by which the appropriate authorities could do that, but they don't have the authority to issue discipline, as an example. And it's been a known shortcoming of our overall accountability system. And that state statute is a huge challenge, but what CCPO does is it consolidates these two separate civilian panels into one group. And then for the purposes of those investigations of individual cases of police misconduct, there's a pool of 15 appointed members. So each ward gets one appointment and then the mayor gets two, and that adds up to 15. Each one of those investigations into any kind of police misconduct, there's a random selection from that group of 15 to a smaller panel that is made up of both MPD and the civilians to review the specifics of the case. And one of the big challenges here as well is our state's data practices laws. So the details of those individual cases are very private data that can't be released to the public. What can be released to the public is the determination of a discipline. So if the officer goes through this investigation process, was found to have broken some policy and been issued a discipline, that discipline would be public. So one of the critiques of this entire process is under the old structure of this PCOC, OPCR kind of dual civilian oversight, there just wasn't any teeth. There would be, somebody would be found to have violated something, but no discipline would be issued, or if discipline would be issued, it would be months or even years after the incident happened. And we're seeing this as a real big problem with a lot of the PTSD claims that are getting paid out for police officers. Is they will file a disability claim for PTSD while they're in the middle of an investigation for a violation, but because they're on disability, now they're no longer subject to discipline. And so one of the things that CCPO is trying to do is shorten that time frame so that people don't slip out of that investigation process. And then one of the things that I did is I brought forward a lot of amendments. So there used to be, the original language had the mayor appointed the majority of the panel. Members of the civilian panel could be current or former law enforcement officers. That was one of the bigger ones. That was an amendment that I passed. So basically, I passed an amendment saying that there needs to be one appointment per ward plus two for the mayor, and then that no appointment could be somebody who was a licensed peace officer or formerly licensed peace officer, so that it's truly civilian led. But it still has that limitation based on state statute around being able to issue discipline. So it's kind of TBD to see how effective those changes will be. But that was the intention, is to at least streamline the process so that we can move through these cases more quickly and actually have more of a feedback loop between behavior out in the field and discipline determined if that behavior broke policy.
One quick follow-up about that. I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, that someone who has ever accused the MPD of misconduct would be ineligible from serving on such a commission. Is that true?
I'd actually have to read the specific language. I don't know that's true, because I know that one of the things that we're explicitly requesting for people to apply is people who have had negative experiences with police and have experienced police abuse, so that we get that perspective in the mix.
And how are people being chosen? I mean, who is deciding that?
So each council member gets one appointment, and each council member can use whatever process that they want to use in terms of determining their appointment. It was an open application process. I've received all the applications. I'm kind of a little confused by how many applications I've gotten because I have this thing because I'm Ward 1. I'm at the top of the list all the time. So I think sometimes people just choose mine because I'm Ward 1, but I've got like 15 applications from people who don't live in the city. And so like, for instance, I'm going through all of our applications and I'm kind of putting some parameters around what are the characteristics that I'm personally looking for. I'm going to value somebody who lives in Ward 1 higher than somebody who lives outside of Ward 1. And I'm going to value somebody who lives in the city limits higher than somebody who lives outside the city limits. For any of these boards or commissions, there is a residency requirement, but there's a waiver for that. And it's become fairly common practice for those waivers to be used. I would prefer somebody who lives in city limits, and I would prefer somebody who lives in Ward 1 for my appointment. But I'm also looking at people's backgrounds and looking for whether it's their experience with police and, you know, whether it's victims of police violence or other interactions with police. I'm looking for people who have maybe some labor experience, have a lot of knowledge about how the grievance process works. One of the big challenges with discipline is using, and it's called the 7 tests of just cause, but you can't just fire somebody because you think they're a mean person. There has to be, they have to break a policy. You need to do an investigation. There needs to be some fairness to the process. And the rigor of those 7 tests of just cause has been a barrier for having an appropriate level of discipline, but it's not something that prevents us from issuing discipline. It's something that makes us have to be rigorous about that. And I think that the police department just has a long history of not having a lot of rigor around that. And one of the 7 tests is, do you treat people consistently? And so one of the things that actually hurts us in these issues, if you do have a Derek Chauvin who has a long track record of abuse, is if you consistently don't discipline people for breaking policy, you're not passing one of the 7 tests of just cause, because now you're kind of unequally distributing discipline when you do get around to doing it. So those are kind of some of the really technical things that I'm looking for from somebody's experience when they're applying. But I have like a number of applications that I've got, and I'm kind of putting everybody in a spreadsheet and trying to, you know, put in my columns of like, what is the criteria that's most meaningful to me? And I'm trying to use an objective scoring process so that there's a systematic way of having somebody picked out, because I have 15 plus applications right now and I have to narrow that one to one selection. But it all comes down to the council member. So all 13 of the council members might have different approaches to it. I'm trying to use a level of objectivity and rigor in my approach to evaluating those applications, but I can't speak to other council members.
Thank you.
That's great. So appreciate your depth of knowledge. You're really in the weeds.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah, it's, yep. Yeah, yeah. Yep, that sounds probably accurate. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep.
Can you repeat any of that? Because
I will.
okay.
Stinson has the worst form of traffic calming known to man. The potholes are so bad that you can go 10 miles per hour at the fastest. And probably the last time the Stinson's been reconstructed in your memory is the 80s, perhaps, early 80s, perhaps. So that's kind of getting around my age. And this goes back to Stinson Parkway is also under the park board's jurisdiction. So therefore, yeah, so well, 311 is always going to be the best number to call because they're gonna at least do the patchwork around potholes. But this is that part where systemically, I wanna work with our budget office and have a conversation around this cap of $750,000 for the entire city's parkways. So that includes Stinson, St. Anthony, East River Road, West River Road, all around the lakes. That's $750,000 for the entire city, and it's been that maximum amount for literally decades. So, yeah. I mean, the mayor could recommend it in their budget. Council could make an amendment at any time, but that's that process where you're kind of stealing from one department for another. So I'm going to have early conversations with the mayor's office and talk about the need for including this in his recommended budget. But, you know, the state could allocate money for this as well. They could. Make sure you ask 311 to call you back. It's getting there. It's getting there. It's getting there. I was also going to say that there's been extremely long hold times on 311. There is a mobile app that helps, you know, you can even take a picture and this, they have select pothole, hit submit. That's really helpful. You can use email as well, especially for the pothole reporting. It's kind of like, you're not looking for an answer to this really complex question. You just want to report it. So the app or email can be really helpful to get around the those long wait times on the phone right now. So I do go riding around submitting 311 tickets on my bike sometimes. So it kind of is. It kind of is. All right. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate the update. A lot going on. So thank you for making some time for us whenever we have these meetings. This is great. So we're going to put Rashid Ali, our second precinct. Rashid, if you're there, there you are. Nice to see you.
I am. Yeah,
Thanks
same
for
here.
joining
Same
us.
here. Absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All
Yeah,
right,
we've got a big
sounds
speaker
good.
in the back, so you sound really good.
All
So
right.
we have our presentation going. Thomas is going to cancel this, and then I believe you're presenting, right?
I'm just going to give you guys a quick update. So I'm not going
Oh,
to take up
perfect.
too much of your time. We'll keep it
Yeah,
very
let's
simple.
pull
If people have
this.
questions at the end,
Perfect.
we'll let them answer. Yeah. So my name is Abdul Rashid Ali. I'm the crime prevention specialist for the second precinct. I'm here tonight to just kind of give you guys a safety update. With me is my colleague, Lieutenant Christy Nelson. So if there are questions that I cannot answer, usually LT does a great job of backing me up. So we'll talk about some of the Part 1 crimes that we've seen in Wyndham Park for the previous 28 days. The good news, well, I think it's great news, is that there's not any violent crime. So we don't have, for the previous 28 days, we don't have any robberies. We don't have any burglaries. We don't have any aggravated assaults. So that's great. Whenever we see that, we like it. But however, you guys are dealing with a significant amount of auto theft, which for a specific neighborhood geographic area in a precinct, for you guys to have 8 auto thefts in 28 days, that is significant. Unfortunately, most of those auto thefts are Kias and Hyundais, with the exception of a few cars that were running with the keys inside. And I can just kind of give you a snippet of where they're happening. We had one that happened on the 1900 block of Central Avenue Northeast, which is very bold because that's exactly next to the precinct. We had one happen on the 1800 of Hay Street Northeast, the 2000 block of Central, and then more Central, and then a few on Taylor Street Northeast and Polk. Not too, I mean, all these are happening in or around the precinct station. So it's quick. A lot of you have probably heard by now that the Kias are being stolen a lot. We are averaging between 20 to 30 auto thefts, and most of them being Kia in the precinct, which is quite a bit of numbers. We've never used to see that pre-pandemic. If we saw that, we would be freaking out as a precinct. We also have, for you guys, we had 3 theft from motor vehicle parts. And whenever you hear theft from motor vehicle parts, that is catalytic converters that are being stolen, even though you've heard probably in the news that recently we did pass a legislation that is supposed to make it difficult. The execution of that bill, how it's going to be mandated, how it's going to be enforced, we don't know. But it's supposed to make it difficult so that if someone steals a catalytic converter, the person buying that is responsible for asking whether or not this item can be matched to a specific VIN number or a vehicle. But that is to be determined how much of an effect that's going to have. The other thing that we have seen in Wyndham Park is a few theft from motor vehicle. And that what that means is people are stealing items from cars, whether it's a jacket, whether it's a phone, whether it's a laptop. We don't want folks leaving things in the back of their car. And I say this at every community event. I've never seen a car get broken into that did not have anything valuable inside the car. And then a few other notes to talk about. We are still relying on the community to report suspicious activity. So if and when you do see crime occurring, please call 911 and making sure that you're reporting that. If people are not reporting crime, if people are not reporting suspicious activity, we don't get data. So that data allows us to map where crime is happening. And when we have extra resources, we can dedicate more patrol. We can do hotspot concentration. We can do a few things to attack those areas that are seeing higher numbers in the Part 1 crimes that I've talked about tonight. Unfortunately, if people are not reporting that, we're not seeing the data, we don't know where things are happening, and we cannot provide those extra resources.
Can I ask a question, Rashid?
Sure.
You just said to call 911 if you see something suspicious. And
Yep.
I would think that calling 311 would be better, but you're saying to call 911.
Yep. So that's a great question. The distinction between 311 and 911 is that when you want to call 911 for suspicious activity, is the person committing the crime as you see them, right? So if someone is tampering with garage doors, for instance, and you can see it from your house, that's a 911 call. If someone is going up and down a block and seeing if cars are open and they're trying the handles, that's a 911 call. Obviously, if someone is forcing a garage entry and they're using crowbar, whatever mechanism to get in, that's a crime because it's occurring right there and then. But if you say you saw a suspicious vehicle or suspicious drug activity and it happened 2 o'clock today and you forgot about it and it's not something that is active, then that's where reporting it to 311 is great. So that's the distinction between calling 911 and 311. And 311 has become a lot more robust in that some of those reports go directly to the police department representative. In my case, some of those reports come to the crime prevention specialist, especially if we're seeing things that are police related. We interact with the public, we follow up on those suspicious activity reports, and where it is appropriate, we send it to specific departments to investigate. So I hope that answers your question. That's an excellent question.
It does, but it just left me with one follow-up question.
Sure.
If there's 311 is good during the day, is there a phone number for non-emergencies that can be publicized for after hours when 311 is no longer the contact?
That's a good question. So are you saying that maybe people need to know what our precinct non-emergency phone number is, perhaps?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So so great question. So if I wanted to call the precinct and it's a non-emergency call, you can just look up 2nd Precinct Police Department, and our phone number is listed on there. But we will try to include that. There's a piece of paper that I almost always hand out at community meetings that has our contact information for Inspector McGinty, who is the precinct leader, Lieutenant Christy Nelson, who I work closely with. And there it is. I think she just posted the non-emergency number for the police department. So I think that's a great idea if we need to include that in our whenever we interact with the public and hand it out to people so that they have that number. I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you. So I'll just a few more points. One thing that we've been promoting a lot is that the numbers that I'm going over with you tonight, anybody can access that. You guys can go to the City of Minneapolis Crime Dashboard, or you can even go to City of Minneapolis Crime Stats, however you want to frame it. You can get data for each Part 1 crimes, and you can even focus on specific neighborhood. For instance, if you want the Part 1 crimes just for Wyndham Park neighborhood, you can select that. Again, for those of you, I'll repeat it. It's the City of Minneapolis Crime Dashboard. Anyone who wants access to crime as it's occurring, and it's up to the minute, every single crime that is reported in the city gets posted on there, and it's a good way for people to know how to access that data. And then as we approach, my last word before we open it up for questions, as we approach the warmer season and spring season, we're just reminding everybody to just do the basics. Make sure you're locking your house, you're locking your garage, and your car, and don't leave anything valuable lying around for people to see. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'll open it up to the floor.
Thanks for the update, Rashid. Really good stuff. Anybody in here have any questions? Yeah, Councilor Payne.
I forgot to mention this. We received our very first delivery of our vans for the behavioral crisis response, which was a really exciting moment for me personally, because I was working on the team as we were trying to launch it, and we purchased those vans back in 2020. Supply chain delayed it all the way until Friday. But just another reminder that you can call 911 for the behavioral crisis response. That's our mental health responders. And that's just kind of reinforcing what Rashid's talking about. There was a period of time where people were hesitant to call 911. And I'm constantly encouraging folks to call 911. Like Rashid said, it's, you know, the distinction is it happening right now as we speak, or is it something that happened earlier? But if something is happening right now as we speak, call 911. The dispatcher will help guide the right resource there. And, you know, I'm just excited that we have these new vans. They're like very shiny. You can stand upright in them. They were previously using a van on loan from both MPD and fire, but these were old vans that were on their very last legs. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Okay, any other questions from anybody joining in virtually or here in the room? Okay. That sounds good. Thank you, Rashid. We appreciate the update, and other folks from the second precinct. Really great to have you on and get the update. It's been a while since we've invited you and have heard from you. So it's
Yes.
awesome to get an update and see what's going on.
Yep, and just for in the future, what I've been doing is going to just about every neighbor association, and I don't always have to be on the agenda, so I can just show up and as the police department representative, answer some questions. And so I'll be doing that in the future. If people have any objections, let me know. But it's great to reconnect with Wyndham, and it's good to see everyone. Stay safe and take care of you guys. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Keep up the hard work.
Yep.
Okay. Great. We've got Luke. Oh, yeah, you. Hi, guys. Come on up.
Fontaine Burris. I'm here with the Department of Public Works. I am a transportation planner, and I also have
Luke Hansen, a senior transportation planner, also with the Department of Public Works. And before I hand things over to Fontaine here, I'll just note, we visited with you, I think, last November to talk about this project at a really high level. Just like to thank you for the time tonight. We always appreciate the opportunity to share additional information, visit with you, as well as get some feedback. So I'll turn things over to Fontaine here, but just like to thank you in advance for the time.
No, you're fine. You can go to the next slide. So just a little reminder on the project for those who did not see our last presentation, as these load. This is a project to reconstruct the intersection of Johnson Street Northeast and the ramps to off of I-35 and also one of the entrances to the quarry. The main goal of the project is to improve the comfort and safety of the intersection for all users. So this is looking at improving operations of the intersection, replacing and improving aging signals, ADA ramps, making it more comfortable to bike and walk through the intersection as well. And then also support future transit plans through there and existing transit as well. Next slide. There's a lot of coordination with this project. One leg of the intersection is owned by MnDOT. One leg is owned by the quarry, and then two of the legs are city owned. Sorry for those who can't hear me. Round one, we did hold an open house in early February. For those who are not able to attend or want to stay involved in the project, we are also going to be having one late April, likely the 27th. Next slide. So this is the existing intersection as it is today. There are slip lanes, which makes crossing as a pedestrian very challenging because of the high speeds of turning cars, but also the distance that it takes to cross. So there's opportunity with this project to shorten those crossing distances. Also making a bike connection up to 18th and then continuing south long-term down Johnson Street, and then providing connections to the Northeast Rec Center and nearby neighborhoods. There were two designs that we were looking at in the early stages of the project. One was a signalized intersection, one was a roundabout. These were the concepts that we showed in our February open house. We did what we call an ICE analysis, which uses traffic models to understand the operational needs of the intersection. And one thing that we found was that whichever one design that we went with, we did need to keep two northbound travel lanes. Otherwise, the whole intersection kind of gridded up. And so because of that and the goals of the project of really focusing on pedestrian safety, we decided to move forward with the signalized design. There was a lot of hesitation of having people crossing the roundabout leg with two free flow lanes going through the roundabout going north. So you can go to the next slide. The project is moving forward with a signalized intersection, but not as it is out there today. It's really shrinking the footprint of the intersection, removing those slip lanes that are out there. So improving the geometry, and then this also performs better than the roundabout long-term for heavy traffic. Yeah, so can you go? Yeah, so the question was what a slip lane looks like. We could go back a couple slides. I'm gonna not move because people won't be able to see me. A slip lane is where you can take a right-hand turn kind of without going through the traffic signal. You kind of just get a free flowing right turn when there's a break in traffic, but it means you don't have to sit for the signal to take that right-hand turn. Yes. And then, sorry, if we could go back into the next slide. So the new design removes those slip lanes, which shortens the crossing distance almost in half. It's currently 160 feet for a pedestrian to cross. The new design would bring it down to 80 feet. We are also adding a 10-foot median refuge on the Johnson leg where pedestrians would cross, adding in a 10-foot shared use path along the west side of Johnson to connect up to 18th. And then also shifting the northbound bus stop closer to the intersection to make it easier for transit users to get off the bus and cross when they are accessing the quarry. So next steps, continuing phase 2 of our public engagement. Like I said, we're going to be having another open house at the end of April. We also do have all of our public engagement materials from the first open house online on the project webpage. We are going to be reaching 30% design of the project in late spring. And then this is looking at a 2024 construction timeline. For the sake of questions, I may ask to go back to the other slide just as we answer questions. You know that.
Sure. So just, yeah. So just to repeat that question, the second part of the question is, will the intersection be closed, throughout the duration of construction, or will there be some traffic allowed through? And then the first part of that question is, what is the anticipated construction timeline? And at this point, we don't have specific dates for construction. We are still in preliminary design. Those will be determined and communicated out to the community once those are determined later in the design process, and anticipate that happening probably late 23 into 2024. The anticipated construction timeline will take place within 1 construction year. So we anticipate this starting and being complete in 2024. And while we don't have what's called, our jargon is a traffic control plan that determines how traffic continues through the intersection through construction, while we don't have one developed yet, we do not anticipate the ability to close this intersection entirely through construction. I think, as we well know and appreciate, it's one of the most, if not the most heavily traveled intersections in Minneapolis. So part of our traffic control plan, and a point of emphasis, will be maintaining traffic throughout construction, also appreciating it will not be as convenient as it is today under construction.
Yes, it's going to go down to 1 lane, and then at the intersection, there'll be a turn lane and a through lane.
Yeah. So the question was, are we essentially removing one of the southbound travel lanes on Johnson between 18th and the Johnson 35 intersection? And then how does that impact traffic, specifically traffic turning right to go southbound on 18th? And I think what's important to note is, for this project, while we're talking mostly about the 35 Johnson intersection, it functions in parallel with the 18th and Johnson intersection. So while we're kind of focusing on the design changes here as part of our traffic modeling, we've had to look at both as well as intersections nearby. And what I can confirm is, with our current traffic volumes as well as anticipated traffic volumes up till 2040, we have a high degree of confidence that that single southbound travel lane will continue to work both for 18th and for Johnson. Now, that doesn't mean there is never delay on the corridor, but it does mean it functions within the appropriate boundaries so traffic can flow. And I think just something important to acknowledge is we know well, if this intersection fails on day 1 and people can't get through, we cannot deliver that project. And I just want to reiterate that that's something we appreciated and studied as part of that ICE report and traffic analysis. Sure. Any questions from this way? Sure. So just looking at a question, will our intersection reconstruction improve bike routes? And I think the clear answer is yes. An important point of emphasis is realizing that if you're interfacing with the intersection today, especially walking or biking, it's very uncomfortable. And, throughout our initial engagement, starting all the way back to last year and continuing till today, consistent feedback we've received is we'd like to bike through here more. We'd like to walk more. It's very uncomfortable. As a component of this project, what I'll acknowledge is we're creating a new shared use path on the west side of Johnson between our intersection at Johnson 35 and continuing north to 18th. That's really important for a variety of reasons. One, it's part of our AAA all ages and abilities bikeway network. This is currently a gap in our system, so there's some policy guidance to make that connection. This also ties directly into recently constructed trails, as I'm sure we're generally familiar, on the south side of 18th and on the west side of Johnson, north of 18th as well. And another connection that we're looking to make in the future as an ancillary but technically separate project is continuing those bike facilities south on Johnson to at least get to 14th, because that's a really important connection if you're looking to continue south. And important to acknowledge the quarry is a destination for a lot of people biking and walking, but not all people continuing through the intersection.
And then I see another question of which slip lanes will be removed. This project will be looking to remove all the slip lanes on all four corners of the intersection. So the court, we are keeping a right-hand turn lane, but it doesn't quite have that same slip as it is existing today.
Years ago, the city council is denying access to more drive-through banks, coffee shops, fast food.
Can we give you the mic?
A few years ago, the city council passed a resolution to not offer any more permits for drive-through banks, fast food restaurants, coffee shops, et cetera, to cut down on pollution. And it looks like the elimination of slip lanes and the narrowing of a lot of the intersections that we've seen throughout the city just increase the pollution. And it looks like, according to this, we're going to even have more backup onto the freeway, which we're even seeing now during rush hours. Anything, your thoughts on, want to address any of that?
Sure. Always happy to kick hard questions to the council member. I'll just, with respect to your question though, one thing I want to acknowledge is the southern leg of this intersection, as my colleague Fontaine noted, is owned and operated by MnDOT, and the capacity for that leg is staying largely similar. And MnDOT is a project partner, and I think if we are creating a delay that is much worse than today on those ramps, that's not a project we'll be able to successfully deliver and move forward. So I just want to acknowledge your statement and also make the commitment that we're working with MnDOT as a project partner to make sure that we're balancing the walking, biking, transit benefits along with making sure we're maintaining adequate vehicular access as well.
And then I was just going to jump in on the specifics around the moratorium on drive-throughs, right? I can't speak for the previous council, but it's part of the 20-year transportation action plan that its ultimate goal is to reduce vehicle miles. And so one of the things that's really challenging about 20-year plans is it's not a funded plan, right? So like if you took all of the tenets that are outlined in that transportation action plan and you magically implemented it today, it would be vastly more convenient to take public transit and bike and walk. But we're implementing it in this kind of like incremental way. Some of it is a sometimes resolution blocking new drive-throughs. Some of it is a, major reconstruction of one intersection in the city, a major intersection, but it's only one. And so this reconstruction isn't going to deliver us the ultimate goal of our transportation action plan that has this 20-year vision. But to be able to deliver that 20-year vision, we need to do these types of reconstructions. And so I think there's going to be kind of a mismatch of the goals and implementation until we can get into a deeper build out of that plan. Did I answer that right? Okay.
No, very much appreciated, Councilmember Payne.
Let's do one more question. So we
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll get onto camera here. Yep. Thank you for coming on. So we have contact information on the project, maybe on the next slide. Yeah, well, Luke and Fontaine. So we'll have, you can find it. If you Google it, you'll be able to find the project. So if there's any feedback, because there's some public input ways to interact with the website on the project too. So if you have any thoughts, ideas, other questions and comments about the project and different things that are going on, check that out and send some feedback in. They'd love it. Yeah, so Fontaine just said that there's you can sign up for email updates on the website as well. So check that out. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm gonna squat down a little bit so I'm on the camera a little bit better. And then we'll go back. And then we've just got some Wyndham Park things that we wanted to update everybody on. Fun things going on. If you were here last meeting, it's similar stuff there, but just some updates along the way. And then we'll wrap up. So we're looking really good on time. Put Thomas on the pressure zone here. Oh, can you click it and drag your, yeah, there you go. Perfect. Nice. Fantastic. Nice work. And then we'll go one more slide. We'll click through these. Yeah, so this is just updates from the Wyndham Park Board and things that we've got going on as we are looking at the summer season. We've got a bunch of NRP dollars that we've been working hard to put into good position. And now this summer, we're really going to try and leverage those dollars, especially for Wyndham Park. So we've been working with Krista Roche and the Park Board and different elements of the city to make some new improvements, especially now that the wading pool is back in operation. So really exciting update there. But first, we have Wyndham Park has been selected for the citywide Arbor Day celebration. So if anybody on the call hasn't heard that yet, on Friday, April 28th from 4 to 8 p.m., we've got the citywide Arbor Day event, which is a huge event where there's gonna be tree planting and tree climbing and bands and a 5K race and food trucks and like a beer garden and a big inflatable movie tent. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna be really fun. The press release from the city just went out yesterday, I believe. So promotions are just starting to come out for that, but mark your calendar. It's going to be a really neat event, and it bounces around the city. So having Northeast be chosen for this year, just as we're coming out of the pandemic and starting to get our planning back underway, is going to be pretty major. So Wyndham Park Board has been involved with Pillsbury PTO and then the Planning Commission for the Arbor Day group with MPRB. So a lot of fun. That's going to be awesome. So we're really excited about that. We'll go next slide. And then separate from that, but we're trying to tie it together as best we can. We've got Wyndham Park has been chosen as part of MPRB's vandalism mitigation project, where they're choosing 9 parks around the city that get vandalized pretty heavily to install a big professionally done mural to uplift the look of the building and the surface. And then also it helps prevent people from wanting to tag it because it is actually a piece of art, not just a brick building. So our park, Wyndham Park, we're going to be doing the big building out there that currently, has seen better days, but we're going to be getting a really neat mural on it. And then Rock Martinez is an internationally recognized muralist, and you've seen some of his work around the city. If you have an interest in checking it out, go find his website. He's got tons of great work. He lives in Arizona, but he does a lot of work all over the world. And if you're familiar with the Prince mural, that was his work. The theme for our building is in line with MPRB's vision and mission of the organization. So our theme is cultivate a vibrant workforce. So at the moment, Rock is doing like a bird theme and has some really neat ideas behind it. We were able to chat with him and get a sneak peek on what he's thinking, still in the concept phase, but it should be really neat. We're going to make the project as big as we can and try and get the building as spruced up as best we can too, to get ready for a mural. So more to come on that. What we're trying to do for timing is to get Rock up here or have some community engagement at the Arbor Day event, because there's gonna be so many people on site. So trying to tie together several loose threads at that time. Other things that we're working on improving, and we're going to be calling recommendations from the neighborhood too, but we have a big chunk of money available. So we want to put in more benches, more shade structures, more picnic tables, more pads and things, and just make the park a better place and more accessible for everybody that we can. So we're really kicking that off, and that's about all we have now, but we're going to have lots of new trees. The Arbor Day event, I think they're going to plant like 150 trees in the park, which is significant. It's going to be a ton. So that'll be really nice to get all those, all that extra shade and all those new trees in the area. That's it. Whew. Talk fast when I need to. So we have time for questions from the home office audience from here. Yep, go ahead. I don't know. It's under construction. Hot seat again? Yeah, and the question is what's going on with the Bethany building right over here?
Yeah, I don't have any explicit update, but we have been working really closely with our regulatory services department. They manage vacant buildings, and so they are monitoring it, but it's still owned by Bethany LLC. I think they're based out in New York, and we've seen quite a bit of activity there. I think they did some construction on the roof, and there's other activities going on, but it's still privately owned by them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Got it. Yeah, Chris. Yep, that's great. Thomas. Yeah. Oh. So the question is, how do we get people to stop taking that roundabout and cutting through the sidewalk? And so Thomas, he lives on the top corner of Hayes and Lowry. So, you know, he sees it firsthand. But yeah, we've talked with Krista Roche and Lou here at the park. And so it's something that we're actually looking at of, you know, how can we mitigate some of that? So, you know, yeah. Yep. So we're hoping to get that resolved this summer. So we're on the same page, whether it's big stones, you know, something like that. Because sometimes emergency vehicles might need to get through, but, you know, that's sort of up to the city and the park board to make some of that designation. But, you know, having people go through an obviously pedestrian zone is not good. So, yeah, great question, though. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. So Thomas is saying that the intersection gets really slippery up at the top. So sometimes they'll use it as the only way to get out if they're trying to get on Lowry, but they can't. So, yep. Yeah, Larry.
I was just gonna say along 23rd, right along by the tennis courts. About every 2 years, I've got a call because the cockleburs and the weeds are just awful in there. And they've been very responsive when I do call, and they come out and clean them up, but there's, you know, they can't mow in there. And there's definitely an issue that if they could periodically, you know, get it on the list so that they do that every year, or if you're going to plant something, maybe you could do something better in there to get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, great observation. I've seen that as well. I'm sure we all have, where that slope, you know, it's such a prominent slope and it just gets so nasty in there. So, I mean, I think that's maybe something we can bring up, and we'll just keep an eye on it. It gets a little tough because it is such a challenging area with the trees and stuff, but I know there is a nature, like a wildlife, natural play area, they call it, on the park master plan for here. I don't think it has anything to do with that particular stretch, but it would be nice to have that not be just wild brambles and junk in there. Yep. So great observation. Anybody from home have any questions, general comments on updates for the neighborhood, anything like that? Sort of open forum just to say if anything's going on.
Hey, I want to just say thanks to you guys for making this happen. You know, this dual ability to be able to be there, but still be at home. So I think it's a great improvement, and I'm really, really happy it worked. Good job.
Yep.
Everybody.
Thanks, Thomas. He did a ton of work on this. We had a third-party audio video company called Henley Audio, lives in Northeast. They're in Ward 1, actually, helped us coordinate all the gear. So they were awesome partners. If you know of any organizations having a big event, they're like a professional AV company. So shout out to Henley Audio Video. Yep. Thanks, Tara, though. Appreciate that. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And Leslie mentioned that she may have, oh, there she is. You know, she came down with a bit of a cold, so she said she wanted to participate, and a great way to keep everybody proper distance away. So if that's it, we can wrap up and let everybody get back to their homes. So thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it. And thank you, Councilor Payne and our other guests. And we'll see you again in a couple months.